Welcome to GusTech. This is the new Asus ROG Ally. By now, I'm sure you've heard of the Asus ROG Ally. It's made waves in the handheld gaming market. It's frankly creating a whole new market. Well, maybe not creating a whole new one, but certainly augmenting one that already exists. You see, a little while ago, this small little indie company called Valve decided they were going to make something called the Steam Deck. Well, the problem that Valve has is that Gabe Newell, their owner, hates Microsoft, like I do and everyone else. The problem being that, well, in order to run games, you kind of need Microsoft. So Valve decided to take a custom Linux kernel and make their own version of an operating system, specifically tailored to gaming. And what basically came out of that was SteamOS. Now, if you use Steam, or if you use Steam Big Picture especially, you can probably toggle it on your desktop. That's basically how SteamOS works. It's real simple, it's bare bones, and you can get a desktop experience if you want it, but it's not really great for a desktop experience. Fast forward to the Ally. Now, this model here is the Z1X, which is the top tier Ally. It's $700 in US dollars. I don't know what it is in any other currency because I don't care. And the great thing about this device is that it runs a full version of Windows 11. Now, that's the great thing, and that might be the crappy thing, because Windows is Windows. But what I can tell you is that the experience is phenomenal, and Asus has done everything they can to make this a great handheld device, and more importantly, a great overall device that frankly you can use for almost anything you do with normal computers, as long as you have a good dock and maybe an external mouse and keyboard. But with as much good that comes with a device like this, and as well as Asus has done making the ROG Ally a great handheld, there are some caveats. And if you're gonna spend $700 US, you wanna make sure that you're spending it towards a device that actually earns that kind of money. You see, this is an early adopter device, meaning that some of the kinks just aren't quite ironed out yet. Now, some of those things can probably be fixed through software updates, but some of them might be hardware problems. For example, the SD card reader has had numerous reported issues on Reddit and all over the rest of the internet about it frying SD cards, micro SD cards I should say, and potentially not even working when you get a new SD card in there because the hardware itself might actually be overheating. Now, this is unconfirmed as of yet, and Asus does not have a solution as of right now, but they've said they're aware of it and they're working on it. But again, that might just be a hardware limitation. Other things, like joysticks having a little bit of a dead zone, can be fixed with software, but you didn't buy a $700 device to go and try and fix things through software that should just be working, right? Potential hardware issues notwithstanding, AMD and Asus have been remarkably fast at responding to early issues. For example, one of the first things that happened was the first week of release, there was an issue where if you updated the BIOS, you had almost a 30% drop in performance in most AAA titles. And frankly, it's kind of unacceptable, considering that this is a device that's supposed to edge out competitors like the Steam Deck with its power. But AMD and Asus worked together to fix that issue through a graphics hotfix, which seemed to work well with the BIOS update. And the BIOS did offer some other improvements. There's also been some issues with Dolby Atmos, causing maybe some performance issues within some games. But again, these are things that Asus has acknowledged, they know, and they're aware of. Now the question is, how fast are they going to solve these problems? Now, we don't really know because it's 2 weeks from release, and the first week and a half, there was a Chinese holiday, which Asus is based in Taiwan, so they celebrate those. I don't know what it is, so don't ask me. I just know they weren't working. Now that they are working and they've acknowledged these issues, the real question is how quickly are they going to fix the problems? And are they actually going to be fixed? Or are you going to need to duct tape and rubber band your $700 gaming device? You know, it really is a thing of beauty when you can take a mobile handheld like this anywhere and load up a BioShock Infinite or Assassin's Creed Valhalla anywhere in the world and just play it on battery power. It's something that is hard to describe if you haven't experienced it, because look, I've got a great desktop PC. I've had great desktop PCs my whole life, and they have a very fun, unique experience. But this is something entirely different. And I often find myself playing games, even like Diablo 4, in my home and using technologies like AMD's FSR to upscale the content and make it look good while still getting 80 or 90 FPS on a flippin' handheld. It really is something that you can have such a fun, untethered experience, even just around your home or at your local pickleball court. You know, BioShock's a great game. And there's a lot of other really great single-player games that, as you get older, you start a family, you have more responsibilities, it's really hard to play them. This device enables you to do that in your spare time instead of doom scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever the hell else you people do nowadays. Where a device like this really shines is in a lot of the same places that the Steam Deck really shined, in emulation. And if you're into that kind of thing, which I suggest you do be into that kind of thing because it's awesome, you can play games that are 20, 30 years old in some cases and have an amazing level of immersion and a fantastic experience because you're running it in a fully emulated Windows environment. And you've got the horsepower to really do anything up until modern gaming systems. But where I think I have the most fun is turning it all the way down to the lowest power settings, 10 watts or even less if you use custom settings, and really eking out 3+ hours of battery life, playing games that aren't very demanding, but are super fun and have a ton of replayability. I mean, when's the last time you loaded up Booger Man? Oh, gosh. Oh. Speaking of battery, we need to talk about the wattage that this device uses. One of the key advantages over the architecture and the SoC that AMD has provided for this device is that it can turbo mode at 30 watts. Now, it can actually go a little bit higher in its TDP. I've seen up to 45 or even 50 on some turbo applications, but that's only for a few seconds. It can sustain 30 watts though when it's plugged in, and when it's unplugged on battery, it can sustain 25 watts. Now you can also charge the device up to 30 watts at a time using a brick that's capable of doing that. If you want to get the full performance of the device though, you have to have at least 65 watts of charging capability in your brick, which Asus provides in their official docs, and I would recommend getting a 100-watt charger or higher with an appropriately rated cable. A lot of the issues I've seen online are people that are not using the correct cables, even though they have a nice U-green charger that supports 100 or 140 watts from a single port. They don't have a cable that can support it. So make sure you have a good quality cable. The cool thing about the battery is that if you go down to 10 watts TDP, for example, in the silent mode, you're going to get a couple, maybe 3 hours of battery life. Now there are ways to enable some custom settings and get that even lower and potentially bump up your battery life by a little bit. But the reality is this is a mobile gaming device that you're going to want to keep the charger handy with. And unlike the Steam Deck, you can recharge this at 30 watts from the wall. So hypothetically, you can recharge the entire device in a matter of an hour, hour and a half, whereas with the Steam Deck, it may take 4 or 5 hours. And that's one of the main benefits, is that while, yes, it doesn't have the same kind of battery life as you might get in a custom kernel OS like SteamOS with a 5-watt mode. I do understand that. This device, and I think Asus, recognizes that you have devices that need to be plugged in all the time. You have outlets that you have access to all the time. And you probably have battery packs that support 65-watt or 100-watt charging, like the Anker 747 or various other products. And we'll link a few of those in the description below. But again, as good as it is on battery, it's only meant to be used for a short period unless you have some sort of backup battery or backup power available to you. So where does this leave us? I think the first thing to recognize when you're buying something like this is that you need to temper your expectations. This is not a $2,000 gaming PC. This has an integrated GPU. It's an APU, as AMD calls it, but the the reality is that this is not gonna have the kind of graphical performance as, you know, a 3080 Ti or a 4080 Ti. That's just not how it works. And your processor is gonna be a little limited as well. Again, from a thermal standpoint, Asus does a really good job at managing the thermals and keeping all of that power in check. But you're not gonna be playing brand new games at the highest settings. And the screen, while being 1080p, can be scaled down to 720p. It does have 120 Hertz refresh rate, which, if you can get the games to push that frame rate, is pretty phenomenal. But you might struggle to do that in quite a few games unless you turn down some of the graphical settings, and you might lose some of the fidelity, the shadows, the reflections that you've come accustomed to on your big brother PC. So for someone like me, maybe someone like you, you're getting older, you don't have as much time, you have other responsibilities, but you still love playing video games, and you want that same feeling that you got when you picked up that Sega Genesis or Nintendo or Atari. If you're that old, I doubt you are, but you want that same feeling. And this can provide that feeling. It's a brand new novel experience that I really think you need to actually experience to appreciate. But it's not gonna move mountains, and it's probably not gonna completely revolutionize the way you play your games. It's just gonna give you an additional way to enjoy the things that you enjoy in environments that you wouldn't otherwise be able to be in. And for all those reasons, I think this is one of the coolest devices I've seen in a long time. Thank you for watching this video. Obviously, this isn't an in-depth breakdown of all of the capabilities of this device, benchmarks and comparisons and upgrades and things you can do with it. But there's a lot of content on YouTube that you can find that talks more about this. Deck Wizard has some great FPS benchmarks, as well as Joey's retro handhelds if you want some instructional videos. And I think that it can really be a benefit to you as you're considering whether or not you want to buy a device like this. But hey, we are Gus Tech, and we'll see you next time.